Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into some really powerful stories from ancient texts. So we're talking tales of these huge challenges, incredible determination, and, well, a promise that kind of echoed down through centuries. It's more than just history. We're looking at narratives that really shaped a whole people and spoke of this completely transformative future, a future that honestly still resonates today. So today, we're diving deep into some compelling bits from Bible Stories Part 6. This gives us a fascinating look at two, well, distinct stories, but they're deeply connected. First, the rebuilding of Jerusalem's walls, a huge drama under Nehemiah. And then we'll journey into the life and the ministry of Jesus, who is presented as this promised king.
Right. And our source material, it might seem concise, but wow, it is packed with significant details, really important stuff. So our mission, our goal for this deep dive is to pull out the really key insights, the important nuggets from these pages. We won't just look at what happened, but crucially why it mattered. We'll dig out some surprising facts, connect the dots, to grasp the bigger picture of these really pivotal stories, basically giving you a shortcut to being, well, really well informed on them.
Okay, let's start with part one then. The restoration of Jerusalem. We'll focus on Nehemiah's vision, his resolve. So we start with this man, Nehemiah. He's a Jew, living far from home, actually serving in the court of the Persian king. We can almost feel the weight he must have carried, right? Knowing his people were scattered, their city in ruins.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine that longing for news after all that time. And then his brother, Hanani, arrives with other men from Israel. And the news they bring is just devastating. The Israelites, they're in deep trouble, vulnerable, disheartened, and the walls of Jerusalem are still broken down.
Still broken
Yeah,
down after all that time.
exactly. And look, this isn't just about bricks and mortar. A broken wall in an ancient city like Jerusalem, that's huge. It screamed vulnerability, despair, a loss of identity. It meant they were wide open to attack, a public sign of weakness, a constant painful reminder of past defeats. Their hopes were shattered.
Yeah, you can see why the source says this makes Nehemiah very sad.
Right. But here's what's key. His immediate reaction isn't just sadness or despair. It prompts him to pray. Straight away, he turns to Jehovah. And that immediate turn to prayer, it tells you so much about him, doesn't it? His deep connection to his people, his reliance on a higher power. It shows his character rooted in faith, a sense of responsibility, and this understanding that, well, real solutions come from somewhere beyond just human effort. He doesn't just feel sad, he acts spiritually, with focus.
Okay, so his heart's heavy with this news. And then the story shifts pretty quickly to this, well, almost unbelievable opportunity. It says, one day the king notices that Nehemiah is sad and asks, "Why are you looking so sad?" That's a simple human question from this powerful ruler.
But it kicks off everything.
Exactly. Nehemiah, probably after a quick silent prayer, right? He explains the situation. Jerusalem's in bad shape, the walls are broken. And then, amazingly, the king, who's identified as King Artaxerxes, is described as very kind. He actually gives Nehemiah permission to go. Not just permission, but he helps him, provides wood for doing some of the building.
Yeah, and that really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How does a cupbearer, essentially a servant, even if a trusted one, get that kind of backing from the Persian king, one of the most powerful men on earth at the time?
It seems extraordinary.
It is. And it probably wasn't just random kindness. I mean, maybe. But Persia was this huge empire, right? They often had this pragmatic policy. Let conquered people have some self-rule, some religious freedom, as long as it kept things stable.
Ah, okay. So maybe it served the king's interests, too.
Possibly. Nehemiah was a trusted cupbearer, right in the king's inner circle. He likely had a good relationship with Artaxerxes. So he probably used that personal connection, combined with the king maybe seeing the benefit of a stable, rebuilt Jerusalem on the edge of his empire.
So a mix of things, perhaps. Divine help working through politics.
I think that's a great way to put it. Divine orchestration, working through, savvy diplomacy and maybe even imperial strategy. It shows how higher powers can use unlikely channels, even seemingly small interactions, for big purposes. And the king providing wood. That detail highlights the sheer scale of the project. This needed massive resources, imperial resources. It was a truly unlikely, powerful alliance.
Absolutely. So Nehemiah gets the king's blessing, gets the resources, and he arrives in Jerusalem, ready to face this huge job. And he doesn't hang about. First thing, he rallies the people. Let's start building. You can imagine the initial excitement, right?
But that excitement, it didn't last long without opposition. As soon as the work starts, the challenges pop up. Local rivals, enemies, they weren't happy. The source says, when the enemies of the Israelites see the wall going up, they say, "We will go up and kill them and stop the building work." Immediate, fierce opposition. This wasn't just construction. It was a threat to them.
So it wasn't just building, it was like defending themselves at the same time.
Exactly. It was basically a siege situation.
Yeah.
Constant threat of violence hanging over every stone laid. But Nehemiah, he was brilliant, practical. He hears the threats, and he acts decisively. He doesn't ignore it. He strategically gives the workers swords and spears. Think about that. Builders become soldiers overnight.
Wow.
Yeah. And his rallying cry, it was powerful. He appeals to everything they hold dear. Don't be afraid of our enemies. Fight for your brothers, for your children, for your wives, and for your homes. The source really stresses their dedication. The people are very brave. They keep their weapons ready day and night, and they keep building day and night, building with one hand, weapon in the other, essentially.
Right.
Incredible resilience.
It really is. It's a masterclass in leadership and resilience,
Yeah.
facing obstacles head on, especially when the stakes are your family, your community, your whole future. It shows the power of courage, unity, and, well, just sheer determination.
And it worked. Despite all those threats, the huge task, primitive tools, the walls are finished in just 52 days.
52 days. It's astonishingly fast, isn't it? Especially under those conditions. It just screams effective leadership and, well, maybe a bit of divine help speeding things along.
Definitely speaks to that unified purpose you mentioned.
Absolutely. And with the walls up, now the people can feel safe inside the city. That basic physical security they had lacked for so long.
But it went deeper than that, right?
Much deeper. Physical security was just the start. The source says Nehemiah and Ezra teach the people God's law. This leads to this deep satisfaction, this sense of belonging, and the people are happy.
So rebuilding the walls led to rebuilding their community, their faith.
Precisely. It was a physical and a spiritual restoration.
Yeah.
A social revival. They weren't just rebuilding stone, they were rebuilding their identity, their relationship with God after being in exile. True well-being,
Yeah.
body and soul. And this is where the story takes this really interesting prophetic turn. It connects this moment, this rebuilding, to future promise. The source reminds us they were taken as prisoners to Babylon, then ruled by the king of Persia. Sets the context, right? This history of being ruled by others makes the next part even more powerful.
Okay.
Then comes this key statement. But Jehovah has promised that he will send a new king, and that this king will bring peace to the people. A new king, peace. Then it asks, who is this king? How will he bring peace to the earth? And it adds, about 450 years pass before any more is learned about this. Then there is the most important birth of a baby. But that is another story.
Wow. So right there in the story of rebuilding walls, there's this seed planted about a future king who brings ultimate peace.
Exactly. It's not just wrapping up history. It's deliberately pointing forward,
Yeah.
embedding this profound hope for the future right into their story of past struggle and present restoration.
That promise, bridging centuries, hinting at something much bigger. Okay, so what happens next? Let's unpack that other story, the birth of that baby. This brings us to part 2. The promised king, the life and transformative ministry of Jesus. We jump forward, what, about 450 years?
Roughly, yeah. 4.5 centuries later. And the story starts not in a palace, not with royalty as the world knows it, but with a young woman named Mary in Nazareth, a pretty humble town.
And the announcement she receives is, well, it's world-changing.
Absolutely astounding. The angel Gabriel visits her, tells her she's highly favored. Okay, big start. Then he says she'll soon have a baby and should call him Jesus. But this isn't just any baby. Gabriel says he'll be great, called Son of the Most High God, and Jehovah will make him king as David was.
As David was, but then it goes further, doesn't it?
It does. But Jesus will be king forever, and his kingdom will never end. King forever. A kingdom that never ends. That's a concept far beyond any earthly empire or ruler we've ever known.
It signals something completely different. A divine kingdom, permanent peace, the kind hinted at back in Nehemiah's day.
Exactly. And Mary's reaction is so human, so relatable. She asks, how can this all be? I am not even married. It's a logical question.
Of course.
And Gabriel's answer points straight to miracle. God's power will come upon you, so the child will be called God's son. It underlines the miraculous conception, its divine significance right from the start. And then, this is reinforced when Mary visits her relative Elizabeth, who's also miraculously pregnant in her old age.
Right, with John the Baptist.
And when Elizabeth hears Mary's voice, the source says the baby inside Elizabeth jumps for joy, and that Elizabeth herself is filled with God's Spirit. This interaction, it just adds another layer, emphasizing the spiritual weight, the divine origin of what's happening. It's momentous from day one.
So Jesus is born, humbly, in a stable, shepherds visit. Then this other group arrives, wise men from the east. following a star.
Yes, these wise men, often called magi, they've been guided by that bright star. They believe it's leading them to someone important. They even say, we first saw the child's star when we were in the east. And their purpose? To worship him.
Seems like a clear sign, right? Divine guidance.
On the surface, yes. But then things get complicated and dangerous. King Herod, the local ruler in Jerusalem, hears about this newborn king of the Jews.
And Herod was notoriously paranoid.
Extremely. He's upset. He sees a rival, a threat to his power. He wants this child killed. So he calls the chief priests, asks them where the scriptures say the promised king would be born. They tell him, Bethlehem.
So Herod knows where to look.
He does. And he uses deception. He tells the wise men, go find the child, then report back to me because I want to worship him too. A complete lie, obviously.
So the star leads the wise men to the house. They give gifts. Gold, frankincense, myrrh, regal gifts. They honor him. But then, crucially, Jehovah warns them in a dream not to go back to Herod. So they leave by a different route, thwarting Herod's plan.
Okay, but here's where our source throws a curveball about that star, doesn't it?
It really does. It introduces this very provocative interpretation. It asks you, the listener, directly, who do you think made that new star to shine?
Okay.
And then it reasons. Remember, the men first went to Jerusalem after seeing the star. That detour led them straight to Herod. And it continues, Satan the devil wanted to kill God's son, and he knew that King Herod of Jerusalem would try to kill him. So Satan is the one who must have made that star shine.
Wow. So the source suggests the star wasn't from God, but from Satan, to lead the wise men to Herod first.
That's the interpretation presented. It challenges the simple assumption that any big, unusual sign in the sky must be divine. It suggests that, well, malevolent forces can also orchestrate things that look miraculous to achieve their own destructive goals.
That's unsettling. It forces you to think critically about appearances versus reality, doesn't it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
It implies that the adversary, Satan, is cunning, that you need spiritual discernment, that even something that looks like a guiding light could be a trap set by an enemy. It adds this incredible layer of spiritual warfare right from Jesus' birth. Really fascinating, complex perspective.
Chilling, really. And the threat Herod posed was definitely real. When the wise men don't come back, he flies into a rage.
A horrific rage. He orders the slaughter of all the boys in Bethlehem 2 years of age and under,
Yeah.
based on when the star appeared. A monstrous act of brutality driven by
It's
fear.
just awful,
Yeah.
but God intervenes again.
Yes. Just as Herod gives the order, Jehovah warns Joseph in another dream, flee to Egypt, take the child and his mother. So they escape, becoming refugees in Egypt until Herod finally dies.
And only then do they return.
Right. Joseph brings Mary and Jesus back, but not to Bethlehem. They go home to Nazareth. And it says Jesus grows up there in relative obscurity.
So this immediate, intense danger right from infancy, it really highlights the opposition he faced from the start.
Definitely. Long before he even started preaching. It underscores the constant divine protection around him, guiding his path, ensuring he survived for his mission. The forces against him were active from day one. That time in Egypt was crucial, a period of safety, allowing him to grow until the right time.
Okay, so from infancy and that escape, we move to a glimpse of his childhood, an early sign of just how extraordinary he was. Joseph took his family to Jerusalem every year for Passover. A long trip from Nazareth, right?
Yeah, several days' journey each way, big commitment. And one year, when Jesus is 12 years old, his family heads home. But somehow, he stays behind in Jerusalem.
Must have caused panic for Mary and Joseph.
Oh, imagine. The source says it took them 3 days of frantic searching before they found him.
3 days? And where was he?
Not lost, not playing. He was in the temple, sitting among the teachers, the learned scholars of the law, talking to these older men.
At 12 years old, debating with scholars.
Apparently. And the source emphasizes these teachers were very surprised that Jesus knows so much about God and the things written in the Bible. His understanding was way beyond his years. It's this clear foreshadowing of his unique connection to God, his innate spiritual wisdom.
And Mary's reaction when she finds him.
Understandably relieved, but maybe a bit exasperated. Child, why have you done this to us? Your father and I have been very worried trying to find you.
And Jesus' reply is quite something.
It is. Did you not know that I had to be in the house of my father? At 12. Our source interprets this as showing Jesus already loved to be where he can learn about God, that he felt he belonged in his father's house, hinting at this dawning awareness of his unique identity and purpose.
A profound sense of purpose even then.
Seems so. Yet after this display, he goes home with them, is obedient, and the source adds he learned many things from the Bible. So it's this interesting mix, divine insight, but also continued human growth and learning through study.
Okay, so from that glimpse of his youth, we jump forward again to the moment that really kicks off his public work. John the Baptist is out there baptizing people who are repenting. And Jesus, who's been working as a carpenter up till now, comes to John, asks to be baptized.
Right, and this is a huge turning point. The source explains why. Jehovah did not send his son to earth to be a carpenter. He has special work for him to do, and the time has come for Jesus to begin doing it. So his baptism wasn't about repenting of sin like it was for others. For Jesus, it was a public act, a symbol. To show that he has now come to do his Father's will, he asked John to baptize him. It's his formal dedication to the mission.
And something significant happens at that moment.
Extremely significant. A voice from heaven, God's voice declares, "This is my son with whom I am pleased." A direct, unmistakable affirmation.
Wow. Public confirmation.
Exactly. And at the same time, something described like a dove comes down on Jesus. The source is careful to say, it is not a real dove. It only looks like one. It is really God's Holy Spirit, a visible sign of the Spirit anointing him for his work. It's this sacred, powerful inauguration.
But immediately after this high point, this divine approval, he faces a major test.
Right away. He's led into a lonely place, the wilderness, for 40 days, a period of intense preparation but also intense testing. During this time, Satan tries to get Jesus to do something against God's laws, not just once, but 3 times. These are serious temptations, aimed right at the heart of his identity and mission.
What kind of temptations?
Well, first, to turn stones into bread, basically. Use his divine power for personal needs to satisfy his hunger after fasting. Second, to jump from the temple pinnacle to force God to rescue him miraculously, a kind of presumptuous test of God's protection. And third, the big one. Satan offers him all the kingdoms of the world, earthly power, if Jesus will just bow down and worship him. A shortcut to kingship, but through compromise.
And Jesus resists all 3.
Completely. Each time, he counters Satan using Scripture, showing unwavering loyalty to God's will. He won't do it. This period is so crucial. It shows that even with God's full approval, Jesus faced real, intense spiritual opposition. But he remained perfect, steadfast. It proves his absolute commitment, his strength, his qualification to be the promised king who overcomes the adversary.
Having passed that intense test, he's ready. He starts gathering his team, right? His first disciples?
Yes. He begins calling his followers. The source names the first few: Andrew, Peter, who's also called Simon, Philip, and Nathanael, also known as Bartholomew.
Mostly fishermen, ordinary guys.
Exactly. Not the religious elite or the powerful. Humble men chosen for an extraordinary task. It signals how his kingdom would be built not on worldly status, but on faith and devotion.
And then comes his first public miracle.
Right. At a wedding feast. In a small town called Cana of Galilee, there's a problem. They run out of wine. Jesus steps in, tells the servants to fill water jars, and he turns water into wine.
Seems like a relatively small miracle compared to, say, raising the dead.
It does. But it's significant. It's his first public demonstration of power. It shows his authority over the natural world, his ability to transform the ordinary into something extraordinary, something abundant. It's also a gesture of kindness, of blessing, sort of setting the tone for his ministry, bringing joy and provision.
Okay, so he's gathered his team, performed his first miracle. Now we get into the heart of his ministry. Teachings, confrontations, more miracles. And one early, really dramatic confrontation happens back in Jerusalem during Passover. He goes to the temple.
Yes, and what he finds there deeply angers him. The outer courts, meant for Gentile worship, have been turned into a marketplace. People, very greedy, the source says, trying to make a lot of money from the people who have come here to worship God.
How were they doing that?
Selling animals for sacrifice, young bulls and sheep and doves, probably at inflated prices. And money changers were there, likely charging excessive fees to change foreign currency into the temple currency, basically exploiting people's religious devotion for profit. Cheating them.
So Jesus reacts strongly.
Very strongly. He becomes angry. This isn't just mild annoyance, it's righteous indignation. He turns over the tables of the men with the money and scatters their coins. He makes a whip out of ropes and drives the animals out.
Wow, that's forceful.
It is. And he commands them, "Take them out of here. Stop making my father's house a place for making a lot of money." This isn't just about tidying up. It's a powerful act of cleansing, of restoring the temple's true purpose as a house of prayer, not a marketplace.
Kind of like Nehemiah restoring the city, but this is restoring the purity of worship.
Exactly. A spiritual and moral restoration. And his followers, seeing this intense passion, remembered a scripture. Love for God's house will burn in him like a fire. It showed his deep commitment to righteousness, his rejection of religious hypocrisy and corruption.
Okay, after that dramatic scene, Jesus leaves Judea, heads north, and this leads to another really significant encounter at a well in Samaria.
Yes, Jacob's well. He stops to rest, sends his disciples into town for food, and a Samaritan woman comes to draw water. Jesus asks her for a drink.
Which was unusual in itself, right? Jews and Samaritans didn't mix.
Highly unusual. The source stresses this. This surprises the woman very much, because Jesus is a Jew and she is a Samaritan. And most Jews do not like Samaritans. They won't even talk to them.
Right.
But Jesus loved all kinds of people. He deliberately breaks down that social barrier.
And the conversation goes much deeper than just asking for water.
Oh, much deeper.
Yeah.
He quickly turns it spiritual. He offers her life-giving water, water that leads to everlasting life, contrasting it with the well water that only quenches physical thirst temporarily.
And then he reveals something personal about her.
Yes, demonstrating his supernatural knowledge. He gently points out her complex marital history. She's had 5 husbands, and the man you are living with now is not your husband.
How does she react to that?
She's amazed. She realizes he's no ordinary man. She perceives he's a prophet, possibly even the promised one, the Messiah they were also expecting. This encounter is just fascinating. He crosses social divides, engages her respectfully, reveals deep spiritual truths, and shows his intimate knowledge of her life. It's a perfect example of his universal compassion and his focus on spiritual needs over social conventions.
From that very personal encounter, we see his ministry expand to widespread healing and even raising the dead.
Yes, the scope of his power becomes undeniable. He travels, and wherever he goes, he heals people crippled and blind and deaf, and many others who are sick. It's this constant stream of compassion put into action.
The source mentions a woman sick for 12 years.
Right, a chronic hemorrhage. She just touches his clothes in faith, believing she'll be healed, and instantly she is. It shows the power flowing from him, responding even to unspoken faith.
And then there's the story of Jairus' daughter.
A gut-wrenching story. Jairus, a leader of the synagogue. His daughter is dying. He begs Jesus to come. On the way, they get news. Don't bother the teacher anymore. Your daughter is dead.
Devastating.
Absolutely. But Jesus tells Jairus, don't worry, she will be all right. Can you imagine the flicker of hope? They get to the house, there's weeping, mourning. Jesus says, don't cry. The child did not die. She is only sleeping.
And people laugh at him.
They do. They know death. But Jesus takes the parents and 3 disciples, Peter, James, and John, into the room. He takes the girl's hand and says simply, get up.
And she does.
She comes to life, and she gets up and walks about. It's utterly astounding. Power over death itself. The source also mentions him raising the son of a widow in 9, and of course, Lazarus, who'd been dead 4 days.
These miracles are on another level entirely. What's the bigger point the source makes about them?
It connects them directly to his future role as king. It says, when Jesus rules God's king, he will bring many, many dead people back to life. Can't we be glad about that? These resurrections weren't just isolated wonders, they were previews. Tangible proof that as king, Jesus would conquer death completely, offering incredible hope for the future.
Beyond healing individuals, he also provides for huge crowds, right? The feeding of the 5,000.
Yes, another incredible miracle demonstrating his compassion and power. After John the Baptist is executed, Jesus tries to withdraw, but the crowds follow him. He feels sorry for them, heals them, teaches them about God's kingdom all day.
Then evening comes, and they're all hungry, miles from anywhere.
Right. The disciples want to send them away to buy food. Philip points out the impossibility. Where can we buy enough food for all these people? Andrew finds one boy with just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes, hardly enough for one family, let alone thousands.
And Jesus uses just that.
Just that. He has everyone sit down. He takes the loaves and fish, thanks God, breaks them, and gives them to the disciples to distribute.
And it's enough.
More than enough. 5,000 men, and many more thousands of women and children. They all eat until they are full. And the leftovers? When the disciples gather up what is left over, there are 12 baskets full.
12 baskets, more left over than they started with.
Exactly. It's this stunning picture of divine abundance from scarcity. God's provision is limitless, far beyond human limitations. It's incredibly generous.
And soon after this, there's the walking on water incident.
Yes. He sends the disciples across the Sea of Galilee in a boat. Later that night, a big storm comes up, terrifying them. And then they see Jesus calmly walking on water towards them. Another demonstration of his absolute authority, this time over the forces of nature.
These These amazing miracles often came alongside really profound teachings, didn't they? Challenging how people thought.
Absolutely. His actions and words were intertwined. For example, his own disciples get caught up in a very human argument. Which one of them is the greatest? Status, position, sound familiar?
Very familiar. How does Jesus handle that?
He completely flips their understanding of greatness. He calls over a little boy, stands him right there in front of them, a living illustration. Then he says, unless you change and become like young children, you will never get into God's kingdom. The greatest person in the kingdom is the one who becomes like this child.
So greatness isn't power or status, but humility, like a child.
Exactly. Humility, trust, innocence, dependence. A radical redefinition. It's countercultural then, and it's countercultural now. The source notes how he showed care for children, blessing them, saying, let the children come to me, because the kingdom of God belongs to persons like them. It's about adopting those childlike qualities, trust, humility, lack of pretense. That's true greatness in his kingdom.
And he also challenged ideas about who you're supposed to love, right, with the Good Samaritan story.
Oh, massively. He teaches the core command, love his neighbor. But then someone tests him. Who is my neighbor? Trying to limit the scope, perhaps.
So Jesus tells a story.
A powerful one. A man traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho gets robbed, beaten, left half dead. A dangerous road. First, a Jewish priest comes by, sees him, crosses the road, avoids him.
The religious leader doesn't help.
No. Then a Levite, another person involved in temple service, does the same thing, sees him, passes by on the other side.
Also fails the test.
Then comes a Samaritan. Remember, Jews despise Samaritans. They were the enemy, the outsider. But this Samaritan sees the injured man, and he feels compassion.
The unexpected person helps.
He stops. He tends to the man's wounds, using his own medicine and oil. He puts him on his own animal, takes him to an inn, and pays for his care, even promising to cover any extra costs.
Wow. Complete care.
Complete selfless care from the person least expected to give it. Jesus then asked the questioner, which of these three proved himself a neighbor? The answer is obvious. The one who showed mercy. This parable just demolishes prejudice. It redefines neighbor, not by ethnicity or religion, but by compassionate action. It's a call to see the humanity in everyone and act, especially towards those in need, regardless of who they are. Revolutionary stuff.
His actions often clashed with the religious leaders, especially over the Sabbath rules.
Constantly. He kept healing people, and his compassion often bumped up against their rigid interpretations of Sabbath law. There's an example of a woman who'd been bent over, crippled, for 18 years. 18 years of suffering. Jesus heals her on the Sabbath.
And the leaders object.
Oh, they're angry. One of them shouts out, scolding the crowd. There's 6 days for work. Come on those days to be healed, not on the Sabbath. More concerned about the rule than the person.
How does Jesus respond this time?
With a brilliant, cutting logic that exposes their hypocrisy. You bad men, he calls them. Any one of you would untie your donkey or ox on the Sabbath and lead it out for a drink, wouldn't you?
Good point. They cared for their animals on the Sabbath.
Right. So he asks, shouldn't this poor woman, a daughter of Abraham, who Satan has kept bound for 18 long years, be set free from her bondage on the Sabbath? It silences his critics. He prioritizes human need, compassion, the spirit of the law, over rigid, heartless rule following.
And the source connects these healings to his bigger purpose.
Yes, it mentions him healing 2 blind men near Jericho too. Then asks, do you know why Jesus does all these wonderful miracles? Because he loves people and wants them to have faith in him. And then the crucial link. And so we can be sure that when he rules as king, nobody on earth will be sick again. His healings were not just temporary fixes. They were previews of the permanent universal healing his kingdom would bring.
So all these teachings, miracles, confrontations, they lead towards the end of his earthly ministry, and his focus shifts more towards the future, towards his kingdom.
Exactly. Our deep dive brings us to the Mount of Olives. Jesus is there with his inner circle, Peter, James, John, and Andrew. They can look across the valley and see God's temple in Jerusalem.
A significant location. And the context is tense.
Very tense. This is just days before his death. The source reminds us, just 2 days earlier, he'd ridden into Jerusalem on a donkey, that humble kingly entrance. The crowds hailed him, but the priests wanted him dead. They were just afraid to do this because the people like Jesus.
And he'd had some sharp words for those leaders.
He had. He confronted them directly, calling them, you snakes and sons of snakes, and warned that God would punish them for their wickedness. The tension was incredibly high.
So on the Mount of Olives, the disciples start asking about the future.
Yes, they sense things are coming to a head. They understand his mission involves putting an end to all badness on earth. But they have that very human question. When? They ask, when will this happen? When will Jesus come again to rule as king?
They want a timeline.
Understandably. They want to know when this promised kingdom, this final restoration hinted at, even back in Nehemiah's time, will finally arrive in its fullness. It connects that ancient hope with their present reality and future expectation.
And what does Jesus tell them? Does he give them a date?
No, he doesn't give a specific date.
Hmm.
Instead, he tells them that his return, his coming as king, won't be visible in the same way. His followers will not be able to see him when he comes again because he will be in heaven ruling from there.
Ruling from heaven. Okay. But does he give them signs to look for, things happening on earth?
He does. He describes some of the things that will be happening on earth when he is ruling as king in heaven. And it's a mix of things.
What kind of things?
Challenging things, difficult times globally. He mentions wars. Many people will be sick and hungry. Crime will be very bad, and there'll be big earthquakes, widespread distress and upheaval.
Sounds pretty bleak. Is that all?
No, crucially, alongside those difficult signs, he gives a major positive sign. The good news of God's kingdom will be preached everywhere in the earth.
So global trouble happening at the same time as a global preaching work about his kingdom.
Exactly. That combination is key. Widespread problems and widespread proclamation of the kingdom message. This combination would signal that his heavenly rule had begun and the end of wickedness was approaching.
And the source asks us to consider if we see these things now.
It does. It poses the question, have we seen these things happening in our time? And then it states quite plainly, yes. It directly applies these ancient prophecies to our modern world, suggesting we are living in the very time period Jesus described, seeing both the unprecedented global crises and the unprecedented global preaching of the kingdom message.
So despite the troubles, the ultimate outlook is hopeful.
Absolutely. The core promise remains firm. Jesus will put an end to all badness on earth. That's the ultimate goal. The peace promised by the prophets, the peace hinted at when Jerusalem's walls were rebuilt, will finally become a global, permanent reality under his kingship. So looking back over this deep dive, we've covered this incredible arc, haven't we? We started with the physical restoration of Jerusalem's walls under Nehemiah, a symbol of resilience, return, renewed identity for a people. Then we journeyed through the life of Jesus, the promised king. We saw his miraculous birth, his profound compassion shown through healing and providing for people, his radical teachings that challenge norms, and finally, his vision for a future global kingdom bringing ultimate peace and health. It's all interconnected.
Yeah, definitely. These threads of divine promises, human effort, sometimes flawed, sometimes heroic, and this ultimate goal of transformation, they really run through both stories. Whether it was Nehemiah leading the literal rebuilding of a city or Jesus performing these healings that showed a glimpse of a restored world, it all points to this consistent theme of restoration, of hope. It gives you a powerful picture of what a truly peaceful, just world that kingdom might actually look like. So thinking about all these ancient stories of rebuilding, restoring, healing, what aspects of restoration do you feel are most needed right now in our world today? Maybe it's rebuilding trust or healing the deep divides we see, or just working towards a kinder, more compassionate world. And maybe more importantly, how can these stories, this account of Nehemiah's determination, Jesus' compassion and power, how might they inspire your own efforts, however small, towards that ultimate peace and healing that I think we all long for? Something to think about?